Let's talk about a few things today. Anti-Semitism, number 2, gold in Israel, Saudi Arabia. We have to get to these 3 for sure. We might get to more. Babylon, global tyranny, but I got to get the first 3 for sure. Let's start out with anti-Semitism, and I really want to get to this Saudi Arabia and gold in Israel. But here we go. Jerusalem Post, Benjamin Netanyahu, Nasrallah. Middle East will not rest until cancerous Israel is removed. This is the one of the leaders there, the head of one of the movements there in Iran. Middle East will not rest until cancerous Israel is removed. There you go. There's your anti-Semitism.
Yeah, and how is Israel supposed to negotiate? You know, the world community says Israel needs to come to the table and negotiate. I mean, how exactly do you do that with people that look at you as a cancerous tumor?
Right.
And that quote's very interesting because that unveils the true motive. The true motive is not the two-state solution. You know, it's not just we're going to be happy with Gaza and Judea and Samaria and half of Jerusalem or whatever it is, the world community, however it is they want to divide it up. I mean, anybody that thinks like that is just foolish. The whole agenda is to get rid of Israel. And that's what they mean by peace in the Middle East. And so consequently, you hear this expression a lot today, Brandon. I've even heard commentators on political cable using it. They use the expression from the river to the sea, the land of Palestine shall be free. And just look at where the river is, it's the Jordan, and look at where the sea is, that's the Mediterranean, and everything in between. They don't want a Jewish presence there at all. And so the whole agenda is to just get rid of the Jewish people out of the land of Israel, which they falsely call Palestine.
Let's talk about this one. Gold in Israel. I love this topic. You know, I like talking about the oil, the natural gas, the gold in Israel. I don't know what all the treasure is. Ezekiel 38 talks about the enemies of Israel building their coalition and coming after their treasure. I don't know what all that would be, but one might wonder if it's not oil or gold. And here we see the Jerusalem temple treasures. Where are they? Tell us about this article at BibleArchaeology.org, please, Dr. Woods.
Well, as an entry point biblically, I would just quote Ezekiel 38:13. Sheba and Dedan, the merchants of Tarshish with all its villages will come. Have you come to capture spoil? Have you assembled your company to seize plunder, to carry away silver and gold? So the motive of the attack, we're talking now about Ezekiel 38 and 39, is the nations are coming for Israel's wealth, and part of that wealth is silver and gold. And what's interesting is when you go to 2 Chronicles, I think it is, chapter 1, verse 15, it says during the Solomonic Empire, and this would take us back from about 971 to 931 BC. Solomon is the king following David, you know, over the United Kingdom. The kingdom of Israel hadn't even been divided yet, you know, between north and south. And it says in that verse that Solomon made gold as common as the stones. And so the big question is, well, where did all that gold go? Because when you look at the book of Ezra, which carefully documents the wealth that was taken from the land of Israel into the Babylonian captivity and back into the land of Israel again, you don't see the gold coming close there to what Solomon had. So the question is, well, where did it go? And conjecture is, well, the Israelis buried it so Nebuchadnezzar wouldn't get his hands on it. And in fact, they buried it so well that subsequent generations have had a difficult time tracking it down. And so we think that we are on the precipice of perhaps a major gold discovery in the land of Israel, which lines up perfectly with Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 13, which indicates that the nations in the Gog-Magog invasion are coming into the land of Israel for their wealth, specifically their gold. And that's why anything in the news, you know, related to potential gold discoveries in Israel is prophetically significant. And that's why I found this article. And keep in mind, this is biblicalarchaeology.org. This is not a fly by night group at all. A lot of this comes from a paper that was published in Biblical Archaeology Review, and basically it deals with a scholar, and they've discovered a document. The title of the document is the Treatise of the Vessels, and in that particular document is sort of an ambiguous statement concerning where the gold could be. It talks here about how it could be hidden, and it names a place where it could be hidden. Here's what the document actually says. I'm going to have to expand this just a little bit on my phone so I can read it correctly. It says there, the secret locations are sufficiently obscure to be suggestive, yet specific. In a tower, as part of the, quote, treasure of the cistern at the spring of Zedekiah. And there's a couple of different traditions that have emanated from this document. One of the traditions clearly puts the discovery or the location of this gold within the land of Israel. And this is what this credentialed scholar studying this document is speaking about. And so if that conjecture is true, if the tradition that the gold is in the land of Israel is true, then I think what will probably happen is at some point that gold will be discovered. Israel will be phenomenally wealthy almost in every category, whether it's oil discoveries, mineral deposits in the Dead Sea, natural gas discoveries, off the coast of Israel in the Mediterranean Sea. We'll throw into the mix gold and silver, gold specifically, because that's what Ezekiel 38 verse 13 says, and that will set the stage for the invaders in the Gog-Magog invasion. So the fact that something like this is even in the news shows us where we are in God's prophetic time clock.
Biden says Israel-Saudi normalization may be underway, and we know that in part there is a proposed railway system between Saudi Arabia and Israel. This is a big deal because you and I have been talking for so long about the fact that in the Bible it speaks about this coalition of nations coming against Israel, but Saudi Arabia is sitting on the sidelines. And you have to ask yourself, why would they be sitting there on the sidelines? Well, now all of a sudden we see that Israel and Saudi Arabia are getting tighter and tighter into economic alliances and business alliances. And I'm pretty sure Saudi Arabia would also like some of the technology that Israel has, particularly on how they grow 5 to 6, 7 crops a season over there. Tell us about this development, please.
Well, when you look at Ezekiel 38, verse 13, and we just referred to that earlier with the silver and gold, it talks about how Sheba and Dedan, which we believe is Saudi Arabia, is going to protest the Gog-Magog invasion. So what you have to understand is all of these countries mentioned in Ezekiel 38 and 39 have fallen right into place. For a long time, we didn't see how Turkey was going to invade. Well, now we can clearly see how credible that is. Prior to 1979, we really didn't understand how Iran was going to invade. Well, now we can clearly see Iran fitting into prophetic orbit. And the latest thing to come into clear focus is Sheba and Dedan, Saudi Arabia, staging a lame protest on when this invasion happens. In other words, Saudi Arabia doesn't like it. So the question for a long time is, why would an Islamic country, if I remember right, Saudi Arabia is like a Sunni Islamic country.
Yeah, Iran would be Shiite and Saudi Arabia Sunni.
Why would she protest? Well, all of a sudden we started to see the Abraham Accords, which are normalization agreements between Islamic countries and Israel. And they're basically agreements that Israel is going to open up to these different countries, trade, travel, tourism, and technology, if said countries, Islamic countries, will simply acknowledge Israel's right to exist. And all the analysts say that a normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel is imminent. I mean, it's going to happen at any moment. Well, you throw into the mix this railway, and suddenly we learn there's a railway that's being designed to the tune of $27 billion, a high-speed railway. The
Here's the
railway is
article.
going to
There's the
yeah the
article on it.
railways yeah the railway is going to connect the nation of Israel essentially with Saudi Arabia.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of a sudden you start to see a framework in place where the Saudis are benefiting from Israel,
And for those
and
listening
Israel's
by
benefiting
radio,
from the Saudis.
that we're showing for television a picture of Benjamin Netanyahu at a podium, and behind him is a large screen, and he's unveiling plans for this high-speed train. And this was just on July 30th that this picture was reportedly taken. So I mean, we're cutting edge here. August 4th, here we have this
Yeah.
picture. July 30th, this high-speed train going between Saudi Arabia and Israel. You said $27 billion. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now here's the key line in the article. It says, when completed, such a rail line would also allow the transport of goods from Israel to Saudi Arabia. So, now we're seeing why Sheba and Dedan are protesting the invasion, because the Saudis are benefiting economically from Israel because of the Abraham Accords and this railway. And suddenly it makes complete and total sense why the Saudis, on the eve of this invasion, won't like it, and they're going to speak up against it. In
Yeah.
other words, what you're seeing is the hand of God moving aggressively in our world to set the stage for a very specific prophecy in his word, Ezekiel 38, verse 13, which has to come to pass as it's written, because the God of heaven cannot lie. And so we're living literally in electrifying times.
And yet we could add this to the long list of other things. Remember last year I did this series on the convergence of end-time events, and I went through all the list of things that are happening and what's the statistical odds these would all be happening at one time. We could add this one now to the list. This huge business relationship now emerging between Israel and Saudi Arabia, with all these other nations making a coalition that will invade Israel. Here's Saudi Arabia making a coalition to do business with them, which would be an explanation for that, why they're sitting on the sideline going, what are you guys doing over there? I mean, we don't want to be a part of this. So, I mean, it's just, what are the statistical odds that all these things would be happening at one time? And people say, what is the point of a show like this? Well, there are many reasons for them, but one is to give you hope. And we aren't just, caught here in a world with no meaning and purpose. There is a divine purpose, and there is a divine stage being built, and the actors are being assembled, and the divine play is about to begin, fulfilling Bible prophecy. That ought to give you a hope and make you smile, right, Dr. Woods?
Yeah, because all of these other conservative talk show hosts, all they really do is tell us how bad it is and how we're losing America. And you see a lot of anger in them because they really don't come, a lot of these talk show hosts, from a biblical framework. They just see the country being destroyed. They see us being pushed into the New World Order. And to be honest with you, if I didn't have the Bible, as a conservative and as a patriot, I'd be screaming and yelling and angry also. But when you come at this subject from the perspective of the Bible, it shows you that the things that are happening now in our world are actually part of a divine plan that God is orchestrating. And yes, I'm as upset about the decline of America as is the next guy. But at the end of the night, at the end of the day, rather, when my head hits the pillow, I sleep really well at night because I'm seeing this from a prophetic angle that God, a long time ago, I mean, Ezekiel saw these things 2,600 years ago. God, a long time ago, revealed the end from the beginning and the beginning from the end. And that shows me that there is a God in heaven, a creator that has revealed these things. And as horrifying as a lot of the things happening in our world are, at the end of the day, I'm a flaming optimist because I see that God is in control of history.
Absolutely. Let's go on to another one. Here it is. Israeli company signs deal with Saudi firm on renewable energy. So we're going to have a transportation deal, $27 billion train, high-speed train between the two countries. Now we've got an energy deal, renewable energy deal.
Yeah, this is just more evidence of this growing economic relationship between the Saudis and Israel. And just watch, keep your eye on verse 13, folks out there, because that's in play right now. Both the silver and gold issue and the Sheba and Dedan issue. And we've seen the same pattern with Persia. Iran, nobody second guesses how that scenario could happen. We've seen the same issue related to the four nations that are mentioned in Ezekiel 38 concerning Turkey. Everybody used to scratch their head and said, well, how could Turkey invade Israel? Nobody second guesses that anymore. And we're to the point now where a very specific, minute verse 13, Sheba and Dedan, Saudi Arabia, protesting. We now have a scenario on the table where a protest from Sheba and Dedan is completely and totally credible, whereas a few years back it seemed far-fetched.
Yeah. Let's see if we got anything else here. Let's go to Babylon. You and I love to talk about Babylon because you and I mean, there's a few others, but there are not a lot of people that believe that Babylon will be the center of that global New World Order. You believe it, I believe it, because we take the Bible literally where it's meant to be taken literally. And we believe, to the criticism of others, they want to tell you New York or whatnot, London. We're holding to the fact when the Bible says Babylon, 58 miles south of Baghdad, will be the headquarters of Satan and his global kingdom. We believe it. And we keep showing every time we get the chance that this area is going and growing. And now we got the fall port being built to the tune of what was it? How much was that? That was a few $1 trillion for that. It's supposed to be done by this year, operational next year, I think. And so, or is it done next year, operational 2025? But it's coming fast. Well, now we have this story. Iraq's flourishing tourism sector unveils cultural treasures and beauty in pictures. Tell me about this, please.
Yeah, that right arrow there, if you click on it, it takes you through a set of pictures where tourists, I mean, look at that there. There's where tourists are able to go. I mean, that's the part of Babylon that Saddam Hussein rebuilt. These are just tourists from all over the world. It's like a flourishing industry now in that area. Can go to Babylon, vacation there. Look at that. That's the headquarters, or that's the area that Saddam Hussein, I think, sought to rebuild. And so the fact that tourists are flocking to this part of the world shows you that a rebuilt Babylon in the last days, again, is also a credible scenario. Now, let me throw this little nuance in. I got this from Philip Goodman, and I thought it was very insightful. He said Washington, D.C. is not necessarily the biggest city, in the United States of America. In fact, Washington, D.C. is sort of small in comparison to a lot of our other mega cities, metropolises, etc. What makes Washington, D.C. a big deal is that's where our nation's leadership is. And so Babylon doesn't necessarily have to become the biggest city on planet Earth. It just has to be in existence and functioning, but it will become extremely prominent, just like Washington, D.C. has, the moment the Antichrist sets up shop there. And so all these people are saying, how could Babylon be built to that level, this fast, prior to the tribulation period? I'm saying it doesn't have to be rebuilt much beyond what it currently is. It will become a huge deal once the Antichrist, the leader of the world, makes that his headquarters. And then that city overnight will become extremely prominent, just like Washington, D.C. has in our nation.